Good morning. Thank you so much for coming in today. We are looking for a seasoned professional to take over our front desk operations. We need someone who not only handles the basics, but can really drive the efficiency of our administrative flow. I see you have about 5 years of experience in this field. To start things off, in your own words, what do you consider the primary function of a professional front desk receptionist?
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. I view the primary function of a professional front desk receptionist as being the strategic first point of contact for the entire organization. While the basic tasks are certainly there, the real core of the role is to serve as the face of the company for visitors, clients, and employees. This means greeting people warmly and providing accurate information. But it also means ensuring a seamless transition from the moment someone walks through the door to the moment they reach their destination. Beyond the interpersonal side, the role is about operational stability. Handling incoming calls, managing complex appointment calendars, and performing essential administrative tasks like mail sorting and visitor logging are all critical to keeping the office running smoothly. Ultimately, the goal is to create a welcoming atmosphere while maintaining a high level of organizational efficiency.
I like that you mentioned the strategic side of it. Since you are the face of the company, that first impression is everything. Walk me through your actual process. How do you greet a visitor the moment they arrive?
First impressions are formed in seconds, so I believe in a proactive approach. When a visitor arrives, I make it a point to stand up if I am seated, make direct eye contact, and offer a genuine smile. This immediately signals to the guest that they are seen and valued. I use a warm, professional tone and a clear greeting, such as, "Good morning, welcome to the company. How may I assist you today?" By keeping the greeting open-ended and welcoming, I set a positive tone for the rest of their visit. It is not just about the words, but the body language and the energy you bring to the desk, which helps the visitor feel at ease immediately.
That sounds very polished. Now, let's get into the more challenging parts of the job. Communication is key, but not every interaction is easy. In your experience, what would you say is the most important quality for someone in this role to possess?
Without a doubt, it is strong communication skills. However, I don't just mean the ability to speak clearly. I mean a comprehensive set of skills that includes active listening, emotional intelligence, and the ability to adapt your tone to the specific situation. A front desk professional has to be a linguistic chameleon. You might be speaking with a high-level executive 1 minute and a frustrated delivery driver the next. You need to be able to listen carefully to understand the underlying need, speak clearly to avoid misunderstandings, and maintain a calm demeanor regardless of the pressure. This versatility is what allows a receptionist to handle problems effectively and ensures that every person who interacts with the office leaves with a positive impression of the organization.
Speaking of frustrated people, let's talk about conflict. You will inevitably encounter visitors who are upset or perhaps have had a bad experience before they even reach you. What specific steps do you take when a visitor seems frustrated or upset?
The priority in those moments is de-escalation. My first step is to remain completely calm and practice active listening. I let the person speak without interruption because often a frustrated person just needs to feel heard. I acknowledge their feelings with a validating statement, such as, "I understand this is frustrating, and I want to help you resolve this." This shifts the dynamic from a confrontation to a partnership. Once they have vented, I ask open-ended questions to get to the root of the problem, like, "Can you tell me more about what happened so I can find the best way to fix it?" After I have a clear understanding, I apologize for the inconvenience and offer a concrete solution or a clear set of next steps. If the issue cannot be resolved on the spot, I don't give vague promises. Instead, I set clear expectations about when and how they will receive an update. Finally, I always follow up to ensure the resolution was satisfactory.
That is a very systematic way to handle it. Let's shift gears to the administrative side. In a busy office, you're often juggling a lot. How do you prioritize your communication when you have to manage emails, phone calls, and walk-in visitors all at the same time?
It really comes down to a triage system based on urgency, impact, and efficiency. I prioritize based on the immediate needs of the person in front of me first, because walk-ins cannot be ignored. If a VIP guest or someone with an urgent emergency arrives, they take precedence. However, if I have a guest who is comfortably waiting, I can briefly pivot. Phone calls are the next priority because they require real-time attention, especially if it is a time-critical issue. I aim to answer promptly or place them on a brief, polite hold to acknowledge them. As for emails, I scan them quickly for high-priority flags or urgent deadlines. If an email is a crisis, it moves up the list. Otherwise, I schedule specific blocks of time throughout the day to process them so I am not constantly reacting to notifications. I also use call logs and digital cues to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. By categorizing tasks into immediate, urgent, and scheduled, I can maintain a professional exterior while managing a high volume of tasks behind the scenes.
I appreciate that approach. Now, let's talk about a scenario that happens in almost every corporate environment. Imagine two high-ranking executives both need the same conference room at the exact same time. There is a scheduling conflict. How do you resolve that?
In a situation like that, the key is to remain neutral, professional, and diplomatic. I avoid taking sides or showing panic. My first step is to quickly analyze the available alternatives. I check the system to see if there is another room of similar size or equipment available, or if there is a slight gap in timing that could work. If no other room is free, I would politely approach both executives or their administrative assistants. I would explain the conflict transparently and ask if one of the meetings could be moved to a different format, such as a virtual call, or if one could be pushed back by 30 minutes. If neither party is flexible and the conflict remains, I wouldn't try to force a decision that might upset a senior leader. Instead, I would escalate the matter to a higher authority, such as their shared superior or the office manager, to make the final call. The goal is to resolve the conflict with the least amount of friction possible.
What if it is not just about a room, but a difference in opinion on how resources should be allocated in general? If two senior managers disagree on how office resources should be handled, how do you mediate that?
That requires a more analytical approach than a simple scheduling conflict. First, I listen to both managers to fully understand their perspectives, their priorities, and why they feel the resource is necessary for their specific goals. I then gather objective data. For example, if the dispute is over a specific piece of equipment or a workspace, I would look at usage patterns and business needs to see where the resource provides the most value to the company. I would then facilitate a discussion between them, framing the conversation around shared company objectives rather than individual wants. I try to propose a compromise or a rotating schedule that balances both needs. If they still cannot agree, I would propose a temporary trial solution to see which method works best in practice. Again, if a stalemate persists, I would escalate to leadership, but only after I have provided a well-documented set of options and data to help them make the decision.
Let's move into the area of security and confidentiality. This is a high-stakes part of the job. Can you explain why maintaining confidentiality is so critical when handling sensitive documents?
Confidentiality is the foundation of trust in a professional environment. When we handle sensitive documents, we are protecting private information from being accessed or misused by unauthorized people. This isn't just about following a rule. It is about protecting the organization's clients, employees, and partners. If personal, financial, or legal details are leaked, the consequences can be devastating. We are talking about potential legal liabilities, massive reputational damage, and a significant loss of business. Beyond the risks, strict confidentiality demonstrates a high level of professionalism and ensures we are in full compliance with data protection regulations. In my experience, the front desk is often where sensitive information first enters the building, so it is the most critical point for safeguarding that data.
Given how critical that is, what actual measures do you take to handle these materials? If someone hands you a confidential file, what happens next?
I follow a strict set of protocols. First, I verify the identity of the person providing the document and the legitimacy of the request to ensure the information is going to the right place. Once I have the materials, I never leave them unattended on the desk. Physical documents are immediately placed in locked cabinets or secure folders. For digital files, I use password protection and restricted access folders. When I need to share these materials, I avoid unsecured channels. I use encrypted email, or preferably, hand-deliver the documents directly to the authorized personnel. I also maintain a meticulous log of who has accessed the information and at what time. Finally, I ensure that the life cycle of the document is managed, meaning that when it is no longer needed, it is disposed of via professional shredding for physical copies or permanent deletion for digital files.
Now, let's talk about a worst-case scenario. We are all human and mistakes happen. What steps would you take if you realized you had accidentally released confidential information to the wrong person?
The most important thing in that moment is to act quickly and transparently. I would not try to hide the mistake, as that only makes the situation worse. First, I would stay calm and immediately assess the severity of the breach. Who received the information? What exactly was shared? I would then immediately notify my supervisor and the security or compliance team, following the company's established data breach protocol. I would document everything, what happened, when it happened, and who was involved. Then, I would work with the relevant teams to mitigate the damage. This might involve contacting the recipient to request the deletion of the information or notifying the affected parties if the law requires it. After the crisis is managed, I would conduct a personal post-mortem to understand the root cause of the error. Whether it was a lapse in concentration or a flaw in the process, I would implement a new check or a double verification step to ensure it never happens again.
That's a very mature way to handle a mistake. Speaking of mistakes, let's say you make a costly error in scheduling or a booking, like a flight or a venue, that costs the company money. How do you handle that realization?
My approach is the same as with the confidentiality breach: accountability and solution focus. The moment I realize the error, I assess the damage calmly. I acknowledge the mistake to my supervisor and the affected parties immediately and without making excuses. I believe that taking ownership right away builds more trust than trying to deflect. I then shift 100% of my energy toward finding a solution. I search for the best possible alternative, even if it requires some quick negotiation or a different vendor, to minimize the financial or operational loss. If the resolution is complex, I involve my supervisor to ensure we are making the most strategic decision. Once the issue is resolved, I analyze the failure. I ask myself, did I misread the confirmation? Was there a software glitch? I then update my procedures, perhaps by adding a calendar alert or a confirmation checklist, to ensure the error is not repeated.
Let's talk about your organizational systems. How do you manage office supplies and inventory so that the office never runs out of essentials, but also doesn't overspend?
I use a combination of digital tracking, categorization, and regular auditing. I maintain a digital inventory spreadsheet or use dedicated management software to log every item, from stationery to electronics. I set reorder thresholds for every item. Once a stock level hits a certain number, it triggers a reorder. To keep the physical space efficient, I categorize supplies by type and store them in designated, clearly labeled areas. I also implement a simple check-in and check-out process for high-value or high-use items to monitor consumption patterns. Finally, I perform a full physical audit once a month. This helps identify any discrepancies between the digital log and the physical stock, prevents shortages, and identifies waste. It ensures that the office runs smoothly without the stress of last-minute emergency runs for supplies.
That sounds very thorough. Let's move to a situational question. Imagine you are unable to find a key document or a specific piece of information that is needed urgently. What is your systematic approach to locating it?
I don't panic, I follow a structured search process. First, I retrace my steps. I recall the last time I saw or interacted with the document and check the immediate area. If that fails, I move to the most logical storage locations, such as designated physical folders or specific shared drives. For digital files, I use advanced search functions, filtering by keywords, date ranges, and file types. If the document is still missing, I check with colleagues who may have accessed it or moved it for a project. I also review backup systems or archives. If all these steps fail and the document is absolutely critical, I will begin recreating the document using available references and templates to keep the business moving, while continuing the search for the original to ensure the record is complete and to prevent the same filing error from occurring in the future.
What if a visitor asks for a department or a person that you are completely unfamiliar with? You've checked your list and they aren't there. How do you handle that?
I would start by being honest but helpful. I would politely ask the visitor for more clarification or a bit more detail about the department or the person they are trying to reach. Sometimes a visitor uses a nickname or an old department name. If I still can't identify them, I would tell the visitor, "I'm sorry, I'm not immediately familiar with that department, but let me find out for you right now." I would then check the internal company directory or reach out to a supervisor or a long-term employee who might have more institutional knowledge. The key is to make the visitor feel supported and to ensure they reach the correct destination without feeling like they are being brushed off or ignored.
And if you don't know the answer to a general question a visitor has, and you can't find it in the directory?
The best approach is honesty coupled with action. I would say, "I don't have the answer to that right now, but I would be happy to find out for you." I'd ask for any clarifying details if needed, and then I would either look up the information in our resources or direct the visitor to the specific person who would have the answer. I make sure to stay with the process until the end, following up to ensure the visitor actually received the correct information. It is much better to admit you don't know and find the right answer than to give a guess and provide incorrect information.
I've seen this happen in many offices. A manager asks you to perform a task that is completely outside your job description. How do you respond to that?
I view it through the lens of company goals and my own capacity. First, I assess whether the task is reasonable and if it aligns with the organization's objectives. If it is something I can handle without neglecting my core responsibilities at the front desk, I will take it on willingly. I believe in being a team player. However, if the task is beyond my technical expertise, or if it would compromise my ability to manage the front office, I would politely explain my limitations. I might say I would love to help you with this, but I am concerned it might take me away from the front desk for too long, or I may not have the specific training required to do this to the standard you need. I would then suggest an alternative, such as delegating to someone more suited or discussing how to prioritize this task alongside my existing duties. The goal is to be professional and helpful while maintaining clear boundaries.
Let's talk about a bit of technical transition. We are planning to migrate to a new CRM system soon. As someone who will be using this daily, what questions would you have about the training and implementation process?
A migration can be disruptive if not handled correctly, so I would want a lot of clarity up front. My first questions would be about the timeline. When is the cutover date, and what is the training schedule? I'd want to know who is responsible for the training and what the format is. Will it be hands-on, online, or self-paced? I'd also ask about operational impact. Will there be any downtime during the migration, and how should I handle visitors or calls if the system is offline? Furthermore, I'd want to know about post-implementation support. Who is the point of contact if I encounter a bug or a workflow issue in the first week? Finally, I'd ask if there is any data cleanup required on my end before the switch. Being proactive about these questions ensures a smoother transition and prevents the front desk from becoming a bottleneck during the migration.
That is very thorough. Now let's talk about logistics. You'll be handling a lot of mail and packages here. How do you manage large volumes of physical mail to ensure everything gets to the right place efficiently?
I treat mail distribution like a logistics operation. First, I establish a clear process for receiving, sorting, and distributing. I designate specific physical areas for incoming mail to avoid clutter. I use labels or color coding to categorize items by department or individual recipient, which speeds up the sorting process. I also maintain a delivery log to track everything that comes in, which provides accountability and prevents items from being lost. I prioritize urgent or time-sensitive packages and immediately notify the relevant team members upon receipt. If the volume is high enough, I would suggest implementing automation tools, such as barcode scanners or a digital tracking system, to reduce manual entry errors and streamline the whole process.
Let's go back to those senior managers. We talked about a room conflict, but what if they have a fundamentally different opinion on how a general resource, like a shared office printer or a common area, should be used? How do you mediate that?
Again, the first step is active listening. I would meet with both managers separately or together to understand their specific pain points and why the current allocation isn't working for them. I would then gather objective data, for example, tracking how often the resource is used and by whom, to remove the emotion from the argument. I would facilitate a discussion focusing on shared goals. Instead of focusing on who is right, I'd focus on what is best for the company's productivity. I would propose a compromise, such as a new set of guidelines for the resource or a shared schedule. If they cannot reach an agreement, I would propose a temporary trial period for one of the solutions to see if it solves the problem in practice. If the conflict persists, I would escalate to higher leadership with a summary of the attempts made to resolve it and the data gathered.
Last question for me. As you look back at your 5 years of experience, what have you found to be the most rewarding part of being the face of an organization?
The most rewarding part is the ability to influence the entire energy of the office. Because the front desk is the first thing people encounter, I have the power to turn someone's bad day around just by being welcoming and efficient. There is a great deal of satisfaction in taking a chaotic situation, whether it's a scheduling nightmare or a frustrated client, and bringing it into order through organization and communication. I enjoy being the person who knows how everything works and can connect people to the right resources. Essentially, I find reward in being the operational glue that holds the front end of the company together.
That is a great note to end on. Thank you for your time today. We have a few more candidates to speak with, but we will be in touch very soon regarding the next steps.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I look forward to hearing from you.